2014 Richmond Community Schools Board of School Trustees work session. Please stand for the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now we'll have the reading of the mission statement.
Richmond Community Schools guides students on pathways of learning to a future of limitless possibilities.
Okay, thank you, Brad. And the vision statement.
Richmond Community Schools, a community nurturing mind, body, and spirit to prepare students for a life of choice, purpose, and service.
Okay, thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
And now we're ready for oath of office. Ron?
Yes, sir.
If I could ask members Stevens and Weber to stand, please. If you could, please repeat after me. I solemnly swear
I solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States of America,
of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and the laws of the United States
and the laws of the United States
and the State of Indiana.
and the State of Indiana.
I will faithfully execute the duties
I will faithfully execute the duties
of my office
of my office
as a member of this governing body.
as a member of this governing body.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, gentlemen.
It's official.
I got off rhythm with Aaron.
I should have practiced.
Anyway, congratulations to Aaron and to John
You
for
got it.
their next term of office.
Best with his mojo.
And now we're ready for public commentary.
Mojo John.
Anybody? I didn't.
Got ahead of you.
Kind of empty out there. All right. And now we're ready for the reorganization of the Board of School Trustees and for the election of officers. So I'm asking for nominations for the office of president.
Dixie? I nominate our current Vice President, Suzanne Durangowski.
Okay, do you hear a second?
Second.
John seconds it. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And now we're ready for the office of Vice President. And do I hear a motion for that office?
I'll motion for Aaron Stevens to become Vice President.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Suzanne seconds it. Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And now for the office of Secretary, taking nominations for office of Secretary.
I nominate, I understand, Mr. Brad Walton.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I second it.
Okay. Any comments or discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And now I will turn the board meeting over to our new president, Suzanne
Well,
Durangowski.
before we switch seats, I need you to join me up there for a second. You took this on in a very scary time, my friend. All that policy work, and we can't thank you enough for that. Plus, it capped off how many years of service to public education?
50?
And in the meantime, we're going to get to honor you again later at the chamber dinner, which I'm super excited about. But in the meantime, we want to give you this plaque with this little tiny gavel to help you remember all of the work that you put in on behalf of the kids as a school board member.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
I'm
Kim.
giving you a Okay.
Speech.
Well, I just want to say that it has always been a pleasure to serve the students in Richmond Community Schools, and I have loved working with the staff. It has been an honor to even make it a little further and to work on the school board and be able to serve in that capacity. So I appreciate all of that work, all of the interactions, all of the struggles, and all of the challenges, because that's what I love the best. So thank you.
I'd like to say something. I want to tell you, as my first year being on the board, how important it was for me to have information. And the fact that you took the time to give me information to make sure I went to the things I needed to go to, I am always going to be grateful. I could not be as far as I am now if it hadn't been for your leadership, your kindness, and your grace. And I thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very nicely said.
And I'm glad Suzanne clarified that it was a difficult time because of policy. Just saying.
We weren't going anywhere else. Do we really have to switch, or can we just go from here?
No, we have to switch.
Get the bell.
Oh, boy. I'll have to work on my rendition of AC/DC or something. Oh, goodness. Got the nameplates too. We wouldn't want anyone to get confused. All right. Thanks, Dixie. And don't think I'm not going to be calling you.
I have lots of files.
Okay, well, we got to election of officers, and the next agenda item is board meeting dates.
So the board meeting dates were in your packets for you, and we recommend, and it follows basically the same pattern of dates that we had for this year. So we recommend that you accept the board meeting dates as posted.
I move to approve the board meeting dates for 2018.
I have a motion by Aaron Stevens. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Second by Dixie.
Let Dixie, because she's not able to usually
She
do
never
that.
got to do it before.
How dare you jump in front of her on the floor? I mean, come on.
The only comment or question I had, and then I'll ask the rest, but were there any changes? You know, how every now and then we hit
Thanksgiving in December.
Thanksgiving. Was that a move? We didn't need to, probably.
They all were
Okay.
able to be corresponding dates this
And
year.
then-
We moved last year because of the start of school so that we weren't at the same week.
And we're okay there.
We're good with that.
And then the other one that sometimes gets in our way is Band Day and Homecoming Parade.
Yeah. So right now, as far as we know, homecoming hasn't been determined.
Gotcha.
And that'll,
Okay.
part of that will be by the athletic schedule. So.
Yes, sir.
My only question was, we had discussed time several times.
That is true.
Are we still on 5:30 on this, or were we wanting to bump to 6, where would allow us to have executive meetings, especially with the potential of work coming up?
Yeah, as I recall, help me remember, but I thought the consensus kind of was leave it where it is, but if we have to adjust based on, if we need a more lengthy executive committee, that we could adjust it as long as we posted
That's
it.
fine with
Is that
us.
right? Is that kind of where, is that where you remember it?
Just wanted to confirm everything with
And
that.
is 5:30 an issue for you, Brad? I
No,
know
I'm good.
sometimes it is for me, but
I'm
we're
good.
gonna make it work.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the meeting dates for 2018 as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Those are the slate of dates.
Okay, our next reorganization is the appointments. Mr. Cross, do we need to do these individually, or can we do them as a group?
It's a pleasure of the board. I mean, you can do them as a group. If there's any that the board wishes to consider separately, that would be appropriate also.
Okay.
Okay.
Is the board fine with doing it as a group?
I have moved that we make these appointments as a group.
Okay.
Second.
My only, oh, sorry. Okay. We have a motion to take them as a group in a second. My only question about that is that there are a couple of appointments on here that do not have names attached to them. They're the Indiana School Board Association representatives. And so while I know we have a motion in a second, I wonder, do we need to have those, consider those separately?
We could do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we need to,
So I'll modify my
Adapt your
motion to
motion.
pull out section 5.
okay. All right, so we have a motion, and are you okay with the second to that?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to consider the appointments of school treasurer as Mrs. Karen Scalf, the deputy treasurer as Mrs. Janet Elstro, the board representatives to accept bids as Karen Scalf, Rob Tidrow, Maggie LaRue, Janet Elstro, John Hamilton, and Glenn Slafer, and the appointment of the school attorney as Ron Cross. Any comments or questions about any of those? All right, all those in favor of placing those as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Mr. Aaron, the minutes should reflect that the school attorney did include approval of a contract that was presented.
Thank you. Thank you. I thought about that at the time too. Yes, the minutes should reflect that. You're okay with that? Okay.
And it is actually in the recommendations.
It's part of the recommendation.
And I didn't
so make
read it
sure-
like I should have. Sorry about that. Would it help you for me to read that in, Kim, or is it okay?
We're good, I think.
Okay.
She has it already in the notes, so
Okay.
should be good.
Okay. That's okay. Okay, so then the next order of business is to have an appointment to the standing committees for the Indiana School Boards Association. The first one is the legislative liaison. And Dixie has said that she would do that, yes, no?
I'd love to.
Dixie's on fire, just so you know. So we're gonna let her be on fire. Do I have a motion to, or should we get the delegate first? Let's get the delegate first too. And Aaron, you've done that for a really long time. Are you still interested in doing so?
Very much.
Well, I'd like to know what the responsibilities are.
Let's talk about that. Both of those?
No,
Okay.
just the.
ISBA
latter one.
delegate? Okay.
The ISBA delegate, I attend the ISBA fall sessions as a delegate for this area, but I also throughout the year go and appear before legislators and other delegates around the state of Indiana and bringing back issues or bringing to them issues. The current one that I'm working with right now is homeschooling, the process for tracking homeschool, and a couple other legal matters involving law enforcement resource officers.
And what are the responsibilities there as far as like top meetings and?
There is the fall meeting. There are also there's a meeting in the spring and another one in the summer as
And they're in
well.
Indianapolis.
For the most part, yes. There have been, sometimes they've been in southern Indiana as well.
Well, I had a nomination, another one. I don't know if he's interested, but I thought John would be good at that.
The ISBA delegate, you have an interest?
Probably not this time, but thank you very much.
All right.
Very good. And we should talk about that for some of the others of you. And at the National School Board Association is a really good time to learn more about that.
Okay.
And so I'm hoping that you'll get to go to that. I think that's a good,
Thank you.
good thing.
So has there been a full
Debbie.
motion yet?
You won't.
There was
Have a
not, I don't think so, not yet. So,
So I'd like to make the
thank you.
motion.
Thank you. So we have
Dixie
got
becomes
it?
the
Okay.
legislative liaison and Aaron Stevens becomes the ISBA delegate.
Beautiful. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Dixie is our legislative liaison. Aaron is the ISBA delegate. What?
No, you're-
Oh, okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes. No, go
I
ahead.
don't
Oh,
oppose, I mean,
oh,
before you
we-
go on, I want to.
I wanted to
didn't-
make a comment.
Didn't ask for more discussion, so let's do that now.
Well,
I'll get in the habit here.
little unusual. My only thought, and it's only because of last month or 2 months ago, I was put on as the representative for the redevelopment commission.
Yes.
I'm wondering if we ought not put this at the beginning of every term as an appointment for that seat as well.
That's a very good point, yeah.
So, especially since, unless I run for reelection, I only have a year left, so you'll need to appoint somebody next year.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's
Unless
a
I
really-
get all these fans that want me to run again.
Would you be interested in maintaining that position?
He just got
ago.
started, so we're not giving him a
so
choice.
Not that if the will of the group is to kick me off, that's up to
No.
you, but I mean, I was just thinking this would be the appropriate
You're right,
place.
it would be the right time to do it.
To put that on
Yeah.
at the beginning of the year duties.
Agreed. Yeah, and we did kind of forget
Because I
about
think
that
one of the things that we maybe, because we want to also discuss some kind of the expectations for the people to report back, well, maybe we should do that as well with these ISBA and it, maybe because there's
Absolutely.
not always been a connection, and maybe we.
Connecting the dots back to
Yeah.
I agree with that too, so.
Yeah, I think that's awesome
Well-
because we don't often get that information back.
And it needs to be under board reports. We
Absolutely.
need to be doing that.
Yeah, like our redevelopment commission meeting this month was yesterday, but it was canceled, so.
Okay, that happens often, right?
Yeah, if there's nothing on the agenda, then there's no
Okay.
reason for a meeting.
Okay, well, we'll make a note about the board reports and, we'll reach out to see if there's anything that needs reporting, obviously, first, but, yes, sir.
Kevin, with respect to your suggestion of John, the reason I wholeheartedly say yes, I would enjoy doing it is because I've got some unfinished business for this year.
Well, you never know, I might have been interested.
I've held, and
I think
that's
that would be
true.
awesome.
That is true. If, with what I'm working on right now, if I'm not the delegate, I don't have a voice in the delegate body to finish up what we started several years ago.
I understand.
And this would be the last year that I would do it because it would be an opportunity for someone else, you or anyone else, to be able to do it. It's something very worthwhile, sitting in there and you get information. It's very good information, plus the collaboration and all that. But I guess maybe it's just selfishly, I want to finish up something that was started several years ago.
I have no
And
problems
then-
with that. I do want to agree that we should have more information when they have those meetings, like a report,
We can make that
be
happen.
beneficial to us.
So if, let's say one of the newer members, one that was interested next year, can they attend the delegate as a
Oh, yes,
guest?
the delegates.
Or are they, okay.
These are open these are meetings open for any board member. It's just that the delegates body has a separate location, and the delegates body is going to want to able to actually address the podium at the time. But it's an open information gathering session for anyone.
When it doesn't hurt to have more than one person watching out for legislation either, so if you all are interested in that, I would
So,
say dig in.
say something were to happen, and, I don't know, just speaking out of turn, somebody were to lose their voice or something like that, and you couldn't speak, would you be able to allot your time to someone else from your, school board, or how would that work? Okay.
It would just be a matter of.
Not that that would ever happen, I'm
No,
just
it-
so
it-
crazy.
It would just be,
It's not as formal as it sounds.
Okay,
you have to, when you go into that meeting, you have to sign in, they have to check your credentials and everything else, and then they have, the eye scan, retinal scan, and then you go in and you see, and there's the sign that says, no one else permitted beyond this point. Brad, I'm
Brad.
not kidding with that either.
But yeah, we'll make sure that we get that on a more regular rotation, as far as the board reports and,
Well, and really with these, like if you're interested, or whoever's interested in the legislative stuff, you can partner up, you can learn how to do it, where to look for the stuff and all that.
absolutely,
You can even go to the State House and watch it go through
that's right.
Yes, you can.
any of us can.
Yep.
Very good. Well, thank you all. I appreciate that very much. And we need to go through.
And don't forget that the policy, we used to have two people in charge of policy, and now we have divided it up among the board. So for review,
We'll all
That'll
be
need to
working
be
on
in.
that. Because that really did help us get through, although Dixie did most of the heavy lifting, it helped us get through all those policies to have not just one or two people trying to manage that, so. Okay, we need to do an approval of all of our existing policies as part of the reorganization, right?
Did we vote on the,
Oh, yes, we did, on the delegates.
we didn't on him.
We didn't?
not
Oh.
with the addition of Jeff?
Oh, we added.
Yeah, because I interrupted after Nay. We voted 7-0.
Okay, do we need to
We need to add the-
reappoint you, or we can do that the next?
Oh,
round?
I'm just suggesting that we put that in the docket for when they pull up the
We can do it
docket
the next
year.
time, is what
So
we're
leave
saying,
it
because
as it
he's
is for
already
now, and
been,
then for
yeah.
next year.
I think
Gotcha.
so.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I'm just looking at Kim like, really? Nope.
Thank you for the clarification.
I think you got that.
Okay, next up, consent.
Policies. So,
policies.
at this time, we're asking for the approval of all existing policies and guidelines.
And at the beginning of each year, we have to do that, and it doesn't mean that we can't edit things as we go. It just means that for this new year, we have to approve everything that currently exists.
And actually, as you look ahead on your agenda, we'll be doing
And
some
a
policy
change
work
right
tonight.
afterwards.
Yeah.
So, okay, so do I have a
move-
motion?
Yeah, I move that we approve all the current policies and guidelines.
Do I have a second?
I will second it.
A motion is second. Any comments or questions regarding that? Little housekeeping. Then all those in favor of approving the existing policies and guidelines signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, we are good for that piece of work. Okay, now we're at consent items.
For your consideration this evening for consent items, we have the approval of minutes, the human resources, including the addendum that was at your desk tonight, and then the accounts payable.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent items?
I move to approve the consent items as presented
I have a
with the
second.
addendum.
The addendum. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any comments or questions on that?
I had a question. The paid off day, is that normal and customary?
It's not normal or customary because it happens so very rarely. It's happened like maybe once or twice before that we can find in recorded history.
Okay.
So simply because of the weather incident that day, that's why we are bringing that to you.
So but it's typically a paid day, then, I guess is what I'm,
Yes.
What's typically a
Typically
work
is,
day.
yeah.
Oh.
It's not typical, but when, there has been occasions where that has taken place.
Rather than having people who are on contract to be working that day have to take a vacation day, basically, is what we're saying. Because it was a forced day off, basically.
But my understanding is that there were people that worked and they
There
were
were.
paid overtime, right?
That is correct.
I was curious, what did that cost us, do you know?
Yeah.
Karen or Jennifer, I'm looking at you
I
guys
don't
here.
have that off the top of my head. I would have to calculate the number of employees.
And it wasn't, because it depended, so for instance, like our ES1s, they had to come in and check buildings, it would depend on what size of building as to how much time they had. So it's not as easy as it's just,
Well, I'm kind of curious because when I first was thinking about it, I was thinking, well, our contract staff, teachers were already off.
right.
Most of the administration was off. So I'm kind of curious and most of the janitors had to come in and to check for building freeze and anything
Right.
anyway.
Right.
So, if we paid, I was trying to think, who else would be working?
So the 260 contract people, basically. So
You know roughly how many?
administrators here in this building, secretaries here. We have some secretaries and administrators at the high school. And then some of our maintenance and janitorial technology. Yeah. So not a large,
Well, I'm curious to what kind of estimate it
we can get
is.
that for you.
We can get it. It's on this payroll that's turned in tomorrow, so I'll know the hours then of who was here and what that looks like.
I have a question. I can get why the maintenance guys and maybe even some of the IT guys should be here, but why secretaries?
They weren't.
They weren't.
Yeah.
Oh, they weren't.
The only people that came in were, if maintenance had to check buildings.
Okay.
Everybody else,
And
yeah,
payroll.
technology
And
wasn't here.
payroll.
And
Payroll
payroll
came in.
was here, because we
Okay.
had
That
to
was the whole,
make the checks.
giving everybody the day off because of the weather.
Oh, okay.
The only people that came in were
So-
the first responders.
Okay.
What we mentioned with
I like that.
technology is, those were the people who were supposed or
you
scheduled to
said
be
that
here
about
that
me.
day, who did not come in.
Okay.
See, he would've hit you.
Because I'm closer.
I know.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the consent items. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. And this is where we get to go back to some policy work.
So under action items, we have 6.01, update on board policies. I want to ask Mrs. Robinson if you want to speak to the 3 that are there.
Okay, I'm trying to clean up the rest of my work. But when I was looking through the 200s, I saw that we still had the old vision, the old mission, and there were old board goals, and it was confusing. Brad, I know I talked to Brad about that. It's confusing to have those board goals, and then we have our current board goals. So this is simply putting in those policies, the current vision statement, the current mission statement, and taking off those old board goals, but leaving the current board practices.
We need to make note of that too, that when we revise our board goals every year, that we need to make an effort to revise this as well.
Yeah, we went through so many, we just missed
Right.
an
Oh,
a
it
couple
was
of
a- it was a
obvious
slew.
ones.
It was-
Yeah,
it was a ton.
I was going through and I thought, how did we miss this?
That's the same thing. We all,
So-
none of us caught it.
But anyway, it
So,
was just.
do we want to, are we going to, I'd like to talk about 2111, so are we going to do these individually or as a group?
That's, again, the will of the board.
Just make it easy and bust them out individually, would be my recommendation.
Okey-doke. So let's start with 2105, the mission of the corporation. As Dixie said, it is cleaning up, putting in the current mission statement. Do I have a motion
I
to,
move that we accept the modification.
okay,
I'll second.
all right. Any other conversation about that? Okay, all those in favor of the update to 2105 signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, then let's go to,
Do 2104.
looking around, 2104, the
Yeah.
board vision.
I make the motion that we accept that modification as well.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right. Any other conversation about that one? All right, all those in favor of approving the change to update 2104 signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, 2111. Do I have a motion to approve the updates to 2111? Do
Why don't,
you want to
I
talk
guess
about
when
it
I looked
first?
at, yeah, when I looked at policies, I kind of, what's the need? I mean, why do we even need to have that?
The board
Okay.
practices,
Well, I
or
mean,
the,
yeah, board practice, I mean, is that really, I don't see a need for the policy as it stands,
Okay,
personally.
that's fair.
And we worked very diligently to try and reduce ones that
Right.
were not needed.
So,
I think
I
your
mean,
point is well taken.
Yeah, so that, it
Our-
may just be one of those
our
things where
board
it's
practice
always
is
been
what the
there.
Indiana
Yeah,
statute says we have to do.
right,
it's always been there, and that's probably a
So,
good point, so.
I'm okay with the.
Okay, so all those in favor of removing policy 2111? I guess we need a
Well,
motion, I'm sorry.
I mean, that was just my opinion. I wasn't trying to enforce that on anyone. If
I'm
there's
not
any
hearing-
Further discussion.
No,
is-
it
I'm
makes
not-
sense because we've got so many items out there that we need to,
Well, and that's weaved through a lot of the other policies, so that's,
absolutely.
yeah.
So,
I would motion that we remove 2111 from our policy manual.
okay, do I hear a second?
I second it.
Okay, any other conversation about that? All those in favor of removing 2111 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. clean up and we're into our work session.
Okay, our work session this evening, I'm going to ask Mr. Payne if he would join us at the podium, please. If you'll remember our last board meeting, we worked through what are next steps as far as master planning and took the information that you guys, the feedback you gave us, and then we met with Bill and Dan and talked through that information and tried to come up with a way to address the concerns that you had and also the requests that you had as for how we proceed. And so you have received that information in the board packet on Friday. Hopefully you've had time to review that. And then I'm going to ask Mr. Payne if he would. He's prepared a PowerPoint with that information in it, and then we can just have conversations and go from there with it. So, Mr. Payne.
Great, thanks. President Darren Gowski, board members, Superintendent Terrell. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update this evening. Some of this will be a little bit repetitive based upon what Superintendent Terrell just indicated, but then we'll get into the meat of things here and go further in depth into that. So just a quick look back. These are the tasks that have been completed in the Educational Facility Master Plan. Most recently, on December 13th, we presented the PK-12 efficiency options. All these items have been posted on the website for everybody to see. I think Superintendent Terrell indicated the discussion about the efficiency options brought up some other issues that it was felt needed to be addressed. I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. So the other things that we are still committed to providing in the outline in the Educational Facility Master Plan are the high school and the district-wide facility improvement plan, capital cost options. These things are all in progress and being developed. A second round of community meetings, a compilation of results, and ultimately a final report delivered to the board. But going back to those efficiency options, I think at that point it spurred discussion. What was that based upon? And so we used sort of standard rubrics or metrics that we do for basing our analysis of school capacity size and therefore the efficiency and use of those facilities. And those are based both on academic programs as well as other programs that are taking place in the buildings. But it was at that point that I think board members felt we need to have a broader discussion about programs before we go any further. And I think that's a wonderful idea. But we've made adjustments throughout this plan going forward. Let's make another adjustment. So we believe the next steps, the most appropriate, is to conduct program discussions and in fact use our community sessions to do exactly that. So we're suggesting that we have community-based discussions on the programs that are being provided at the buildings. Then we come back with that information, report back to the board, conduct a board workshop to discuss and allow you the opportunity to consider that information and make adjustments as necessary before we go forward. So, and by the way, this is conversational as always, so if you have any questions as we're going through this, then by all means step in. So programs is a pretty broad subject. Obviously there are all academic programs mandated by the state. You're going to continue to provide those. Certainly you're, as any other district, you have the opportunity to deliver those in different ways. But those are all there. But I think what we're talking about are all of those special programs that Richmond Community School either provides or would like to provide or modify. And so we want to make sure that we address all of those in this conversation and in a little bit more depth beyond what was done in the educational visioning that took place at the very beginning. So again, let's use our community input sessions now, our second round, to provide a forum for that discussion to take place. And here's how I would suggest that we do that. Well, I'm sorry, I got a little bit ahead of myself. So the purpose of this is to ensure that the programs are appropriately accommodated in your school facilities. And that can include location, size, nature, and adjustments that might be made to those programs or additional programs. Again, this information coupled with other data will enable the board to consider improvements to your existing facilities and maintaining and reducing facility inventory now or in the future. So we're not pressing for a response to the efficiency options that we showed you without considering programs. I mean, ultimately, and we've talked about this from the very beginning, It's about what's happening in the buildings as much as maintaining your building. So let's make sure that you're all comfortable that you are serving and providing the programs your community wants and demands. And then we'll wrap things up, and you'll have all that information to consider if you want to do anything in the future or not. That'll ultimately be the board decision. So what's the format? And this is something that we regularly do, and I think we have a great format for this. So number one, in the order of things that'll happen in the agenda, we'll make a presentation by your administration. It'll be very similar to the educational visioning presentations were made, but probably in a little bit more depth and specificity about those programs, where they're located, what they do, who they are serving. And that will include both elementary, secondary, as well as special programming throughout the corporation. Number two, then, we'll provide a presentation on trends that we see in the Midwest and beyond. So hopefully this is sort of an opportunity to think beyond just what you're doing. Here are some of the things that we see that other school corporations in Indiana and beyond are doing in terms of programming that you might want to consider. So this gives you a little bit of a broader vision. Three, then we'll break into small group discussions at tables of 6 to 8. Each one of those tables will be seated with an administrative representative or ourselves. I think the best way to do this to make it highly productive is we use the term report card, but however you want to describe it, let's provide a summary of all of your existing programs as well as the things that Fanning Howey has presented. And we'll ask those tabletop discussions to grade those, if you will, in terms of maybe priority, success, need, and we'll have that opportunity for them to also fill in other. What are we missing? What would we like to see? We'll ask then for a representative to be identified at each one of the tabletops, and then they'll report out to the group as a whole. We envision this to take about 90 minutes, so if the presentation is approximately 30 minutes, we'll allow for 30 plus minutes for the tabletops to have their discussion, do the scoring, and then we'll allow report out of between 2.5 to 5 minutes from each one of the tabletops. And then we'll do this 3 times, as we had proposed before. Obviously, this changes from discussing options to discussing programming. The group, yeah, I'm sorry, Aaron, please.
I'm sorry to bother you.
No,
Interrupt
please.
you. The community meetings, which is going to be very important.
Yes.
And engagement and everything that you just brought about. I'm not going to call out the school corporation, but I know that there is one that you've recently been working with. They had a reorganization yesterday, and one of their concerns was during the process that their community meetings were not as well attended as they had hoped to get the results that they had hoped. What can we do? What can you suggest that we do right now, having learned from that experience, to ensure that we don't fall into that same pitfall?
I'm not sure exactly which one that is, but no doubt. So unfortunately, it seems like the only time folks show up is when somebody's going to gore their ox, so to speak, and then they show up. So I wouldn't suggest that you throw out any threats, but however you can advertise and explain what the purpose of what we're looking at is. Let's set aside this discussion about facility efficiency and what buildings may be being considered for changes or whatever, and let's talk about what it is that we're doing for kids within those buildings. I still think that you're going to get your best showing in the evening as opposed to during the day, even though we did have the one community session in the public library. And if necessary, we're proposing some dates, but we have no problems. If you'd like to give a little bit more time and a little bit more advertisement, we could maybe push that out a little bit too. So we're not trying to push you forward to this, but we could give a little bit more time between now and then.
So I think your point is well taken, but I also think it's important that all of the board participate in those meetings as well.
That's what
So we can hear directly from our community members. And so that's why I think it is important that we establish those dates tonight, so then we can exhaust every possible advertising measure that we have, beginning tomorrow morning on the radio and with the paper and everything that's coming out of this meeting as well.
I would like to add another meeting. You got a list of these community meetings, but I would also like to add another meeting, maybe 2, and Richmond Community Schools in some way figure out how to support this. But You talked about representation from basically administration, you guys, and the board, but I would like to hear from our 400 staff members. I mean, I would like, a lot of our teachers have some great ideas on some ideas for programming, and so I'd like to set aside some time and I'd like to do it at least twice, because with everybody's schedule, you can't pick a date where everybody can attend and make it convenient, whether it's professional development day, maybe a voluntary on Tuesday, have the extended professional development anyway, maybe extend it another hour and give them the option to weigh in on some thoughts and directions and futures. But I think we could get some great information from our staff members as well.
In addition to the public meeting?
In addition to the public meetings, yeah.
Specifically target our people.
Yeah, I want to specifically target our staff, especially since we seem to have, quite a wide variety. We've got a small group of staff that are leading the charge, so to speak, in what I call the next generation. And we got also some of the, I guess, seasoned staff, that'd be a better way to say. And I think, I think that if we could get them involved in the process, give them a couple opportunities, not only will we get, I think, some good ideas or some thoughts, but I also think it might help with buy-in later on if we decide to change something.
I like the idea. I think one of the important things is we have to make sure that they don't feel like that's their only time and that they can't come to the public.
Right, right.
Because so many of our staff members have kids.
I totally agree with that, but I think if we go out of our way to provide,
I agree.
I think that would behoove us in the long run.
Another suggestion on that is maybe we need to do some more of that with the administration here to reach out to some individuals. I was actually involved on a thread earlier this week that scary. It was actually a civil discussion on Facebook. It was amazing. But the people that were, I'm telling you, it was like a unicorn. You've heard about it and rarely seen it. But the people involved were HR people and managers at like Primex and Cinram and a lot of these factories and Blue Buffalo, and a lot of these people were involved, and it was an unbelievably civil conversation to where maybe we need to take that on us as we're talking about programming. And one of the questions in the survey you asked earlier was the relationship between education in the community and our workforce. Let's ask our workforce, what kind of programming do they want to see? What needs do they see? Do they need more soft skills? Do they need more hard skills? Do we need to have more CNC programming, like an advanced manufacturing program? Or do we need to, the lost art of looking someone in the eye and balancing a checkbook is, what kind of programming do we need as far as to make our kids not just graduate, but productive members of society?
So you're saying sort of target some invitations to certain
Absolutely.
business folks, which I
Specifically
think we've done that
reach
before.
out
We
and
did
call
for
them,
the last set of meetings downtown.
call them or stop by. Jeff, I know you get out to several area businesses. Talk to them, ask them, hey, these are our dates, come get them. Jeff or John, you're around. Anybody around the community, let's talk to these guys.
Todd's on the chamber board too, so it's a
Absolutely.
really great way to.
That, specifically target those guys, and not just the upper management. Talk to some of the HR people, some of the shift supervisors.
Well, unfortunately, they would have,
Well,
my level is to go to the
but-
upper management, and then
but
they would have to
talk to them,
disperse the
say what you're
information.
wanting, and say, hey, can you delegate 2 of your foremen or 2 of your crew leaders, or and get some of that feedback, because to your point of asking the teachers, sometimes we overlook some of the most obvious people to talk to. So,
Well, I'm not opposed to taking the time and expanding it as much as we need to, because the goal here is for us to come up with not only a short-term plan, but a longer-term plan.
Right.
So,
What if those key people can't come here? Can we, and I don't even know if this is something we can do. Is there like a survey you can put out?
So, yeah, you can do surveys online. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty
I-
standard practice, and that could be done as
Yeah,
well.
I think if a lot of people are aware of that, they will be more, I would be personally more apt to do that than to sometimes take time to go to those meetings. I mean, it makes more sense then. I think you'll get just as great a response, but it's just a suggestion that we do some sort of online thing as well for the people who cannot attend, parents who cannot attend, lay people who cannot attend, to do an online survey that will help boost the information we might need to get.
Yeah,
That's
it's-
For those who cannot be there.
And that's where I was getting at. If we send a email out or a letter, I mean, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, set it aside. But if we physically make the phone call to the people or stop by and talk to them and say, hey, we really need some input on this. And this is what we're really wanting to get the community involvement, because this affects every single person that pays a tax dollar in Richmond, Indiana.
I like the idea too, Jeff, but I do think we need to be sure, personally, around this table, that we don't commit ourselves, because I really do think it's important for us to be at these meetings. And so let's be
Just set myself-
mindful of that, because and I think everyone should be at every one. And the reason why I think that's important is because as we get to going and we're talking, I don't want us to have to rely on one another to synthesize or synopsize what was said. And if we really mean that, then I think it would be better if we all heard everything.
Could we record each of these meetings?
And that's a possibility. Then we have to commit to watching them.
Well, I
You know,
mean-
I'm just,
Right.
You know,
'Cause that's
I'm
a-
not speaking for everybody, but I think
The one,
everybody here would.
yeah,
commit
the
to
one
see.
challenge that comes with recording is
Where?
is getting people to agree to it, one.
oh, yeah.
But then secondly is what facilities, obviously like going to Morrison Reeves was a great idea because we went to where the people were more accessible. Recording there would have been more of a challenge, but,
Yeah, you would have to have your audience aware that they were being
That's
recorded,
right.
and so that they would, that would be.
and sometimes that limits what they will say,
Right.
what they won't say.
So.
That was sort of the purpose of and by the way, these are all excellent ideas, thank you. The purpose, and it could be an administrator or just a staff member, but having them at the table only for the purpose of encouraging a broad discussion of the full outline, just to make sure that group doesn't get so burrowed into one item that they miss the broader section.
To
So that
facilitate
report
that.
card that comes back from each table is robust, and they've really considered everything that they've heard as much as they can within the time frame. But even though everybody gets to hear that reporting out at the end, each one of the tables an individual leader that's been designated to step up and say, here's what we talked about. These are the key things that within 5 minutes that we discussed we thought were important. But that physical report card that comes from that table then is something that you all have, and that can be all aggregated and put on the website as well.
Okay.
So we thought that was really important as a deliverable out of those meetings.
And then, do you see in this organization, in this framework, the board members during the table conversation sort of wandering? Do you see them assigned to a table? What-
I think you could be at individual tables. It's sort of difficult as you're wondering
It
and
is.
listening in. You're just getting,
'Cause you
you're
get
sort of getting
pieces everywhere.
snippets. But if you're listening to hopefully a somewhat diverse group within a table,
And sort of spread
I
us
think you
out?
get a broader listening.
Okay.
We'll just have to make sure that we listen instead of talking.
Yeah, that's difficult, but yes.
Well, and I think you have to set the rule that we're here to listen.
Right, exactly.
We're not gonna interject, and then the bigger part, the most important part of it is at the end where they're all reporting out, that all 7 of you are there
You can hear all
listening
that
and-
at that point. Hopefully that the key there is that you are hearing the most key topics that each one of those tables
Right.
felt was, that they felt was most important.
So we've had a couple of suggestions, and I just need to poll the board and see what you guys, and I think they're good suggestions, but to make sure that I have the direction from the board as to where you want to go with that. So do you want to look at setting staff meeting, and I don't know that it needs to be a couple, depending if we could do something with the professional development day, we can knock that out at one time, but I don't know that we can do it in one time. So I think just the flexibility there to know that a way to get with all of the staff and address them. And then also look at, with our key stakeholders within our community, and we have a great list already of people to contact for that, and to look at setting that, a meeting up with them, and then also an online survey, in addition to the 3 meetings that we proposed. So we're looking at 6 meetings.
Should we consider a group of students at the high school as well?
Yeah, that's, our plan was we would do the high school again, the intermediates as well,
Okay,
to
good.
try and, similar to what we did last time.
Yeah, I think that's good, and I think if we could figure out some way at each meeting to do some kind of a small report out, and I say that because being through this a couple of times, you know, the biggest one being the resources for results. And especially from today's society when everybody is so slammed from all directions, I think a lot of people don't pay attention until they hear something is changing or
something that's important to
something
them.
that's important that comes up to them. So I think if we could figure out some way to do some small report outs, that maybe our audiences will get larger as the meetings progress. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I was just talking with somebody last night at the swim meet, and they brought up when Baxter was closed, how many years ago?
Yeah, I was on the board.
99, 2000, I think it was. No, it was later than that.
It was a big deal.
My kids were first grade and kindergarten when it closed there. But they were talking about how their group of like 38, 40 people showed up with signs and banners, and nobody else did because it didn't impact them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I just think I think this is the area this is the process that we really need to make sure that we're deliberate in, because whether you agree with the resources for results process or not, one of the things that I liked about it was a group of 30 to 32 people meeting for a term period of a year. I mean, so people had ample opportunity to voice their opinion or their suggestions. And I think that's part of the reason why when the final recommendation came through at the end, we really didn't have a lot of kickback.
No
At least I don't
pushback.
think we did.
No.
So if we try to do something like this and come out with a plan and try to have this process wrapped up in 4 weeks, then we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
Well, and I think, again, just because at our last board meeting, you know, we threw out a lot of options, and people already made assumptions, and there were lots of rumors, and I think we need to continually reiterate, no decisions of any kind have been made. We are waiting to finish this process, to get all the information we can possibly get from as many people as we can get it from before any decisions are made. So there's nothing decided. We're just looking at all kinds of options to do the best job we can with the dollars we have.
and with that, I'm also wondering, we've used the term programming, but should we not also include reconfiguration? Because some of the options consider grade reconfiguration. And that's going to be.
And our intent with that is that with programming, that is a big part of that is the grade reconfiguration.
So I think maybe that not only should it be advertised as programming, but
Sure.
also advertised programming and possible grade reconfiguration, because I think that the grade reconfiguration could have as much an impact on what we decide to spend our capital money on as some of the programming.
Well, and again, as you mentioned, people come out when it begins to impact them,
So,
get involvement.
so I think, and this is where, as one, I'm only speaking for one of 7, but as a board member myself, this is where I'm going to need educational experts to tell me, is K3 the best? Is K6 the best? Is whatever I, as an individual board member, I don't know the answer to that
Or
question.
what are the pros and cons of each?
Or-
Because there's
right.
probably never, no one's ever going to agree on what's best, but what there, it's going to be, you know, if you do this, these are the advantages, these are the issues, including cost.
Because that pays a big, when we start looking at, fill rate, this is again me personally, when I start to look at building capacity, I get a little nervous if we start getting above 85%.
Don't disagree.
So, I
Based
heard
on
him
what we
say
know about how
91
space
before,
is
and
used.
everybody has a little different opinion, but especially if we want to talk about the eventuality of possibly closing the school, I don't want to have to turn around in 2 years and think, oh, wait a minute.
Yep.
Maybe that wasn't
Well, and
smart.
also given how we know that the population shifts, because we just talked about this, not all that long ago, Westview was full. And
It
we were
was underutilized, and now it's full.
Well, but it was full before that,
yeah.
when we were shifting kids to Fairview and Dennis, if you recall. That
yes.
wasn't all that long
That
ago.
was at Dennis.
And then it was under, and now it's, so we have to deal with it, but,
Yeah, because it's better than
there's no
dealing with redistricting every year.
well, that's the thing. No decision, unfortunately, is permanent in some ways, because that is just going to be a constant. I mean, neighborhoods age, and then new families come in, and that's just a fact. And like you said, you don't want to be shifting border lines every year, but managing some of the decisions we've made in the past regarding transfers and not allowing transfers has helped us stabilize that, but you're still relying on neighborhoods. So, and those population shifts, and I'm certain we're not alone on that.
Can I say something? The last meeting we had, if I'm not correct, please correct me. Didn't you bring to us the idea about the schools and the buildings and things like that, what we possibly should do? Am I wrong?
Yes,
Okay.
what we showed was what we called the efficiency options,
Right.
which is how could we rebalance so that we were, as Mr. Slifer said, in some cases up to 90% utilization of the buildings. What would that mean? And would that mean that you would not need all of your facilities, or what would it look like if you kept all of them? So yes, we did do that.
Okay, so I'm a little confused. Now, at the last board meeting, it was a big discussion about programming, and not the programming piece was in there. Now we're having a discussion about programming and buildings. They're together, but we have to decide one thing at a time.
Well,
If we start including all that, then we're going to have like 10 or 20 meetings to try to make all this work, and I think we just got to piece it at a time.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just really confusing to me, because I remember there was a big discussion about the building stuff, and we need to be talking about programming, and now we're talking about programming, and now we're talking about buildings.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
I think what I'm hearing is that programming definitely leads the conversation, but that you can't completely sever capacity and what's going on in a building. And if you say, hey, we really, really, really want life skills in every building, well, that completely impacts capacities of buildings because of the way space has to be utilized and the requirements for those kinds of classrooms to be in every building. And so once you have those conversations, you really can't completely separate them. And so I think that's what's being said. I don't think anyone wants to go back to, well, pick which option you want. I think we're just saying you have to keep in mind that if you say you want pre-K in a center versus in every building, that's important to us. That changes your building utilization completely.
So should we just hear about what the community wants in the way of programming
And
right
that
now?
is-
And not to overwhelm them or impact them so greatly, because those two are big decisions. Should we just make the decision about what we want to see on the programming side? Because we've got a lot of suggestions, really good suggestions. But we need to kind of narrow it down and not have so many that, well, I guess we don't have to keep track of it.
Well, I mean, what I've written down is what are our defining programs? Our programs say who we are, what are those programs? And not that we don't address all the needs, but athletics, I think, should be on the list as a program, because it's a program of RCS, and it's not anywhere.
That's a
So I
really
think
good
we need
point.
to add that one. I've got like non-traditional, which include the online academies and stuff. I mean, is that a defining teaching, which is the stopgag for everything we do every day. But you know, G&T, AP, Career Ed, I mean, how do those programs, I mean, what does the community want to see? I mean, how do they want RCS defined? And it's through those programs.
That's a very good way to put
As,
it.
as well as what we
That's
want
very
to see.
good.
Yeah. And that's the intention of where we're going. But Debbie, to come back to your point, when we planned this out, this was in the order that it is to come to programs and have this conversation, because one of the things we've got to keep in mind, Jeff mentioned the grade level configurations. We also have to realize that we have to live within our means, especially going forward, knowing some of the changes that are coming with graduation pathways, for instance, and how that's going to change even how we utilize resources. They tell us there's going to be more. I don't believe it. So we're going to, again, have to do more with less. But again, to continue to offer all of the programs, and I think, John, you hit it dead on with what are the programs that identify Richmond Community Schools,
That's perfect.
and what are the ones that we say, these must continue. Great. So in order to make sure that those continue, what do we need to do fiscally to ensure that?
That makes that work.
And that's why in the past, we've looked at buildings and the amount of space that we need, and then we've moved programs to those buildings. Logos was by itself at Pleasant View, then it was a test.
And it's actually been.
Now it's a hybrid.
Well, and it's actually at one point was separated and was in both buildings.
Yes,
So-
yeah. And so, again, that's just one example of that program is important to us. And as the gentleman mentioned at the library, we just want to know the program is going to be there. And I think the program could have some modifications to it to continue to address even the pathways as we're continuing to move in that direction. And so the commitment is that program, but how do we remain fiscally ahead of the curve so that we can continue to meet the needs of our increasing at-risk population that we're servicing?
And how we may want to change that program moving forward.
Absolutely. And so Logos is just one example. So then that's true to our online academy. As John mentioned, especially looking at the competition we have with Indiana K-12 and virtual schools. How do we do our own so that we get to keep those students here and they get a Richmond High School diploma? So that's the part that we're looking at here, and looking at what these programs are and getting that information, so that then once the board has heard that information and got their reports, then you begin to look at all these different things coming back. And then, as Bill mentioned, they're working right now on what are the costs that are going to be associated with the different types of projects that could go on there. And I think the board can't just look at the capacity. They can't just look at the demographic study. They can't just look at the program study in isolation. It's got to be, once you get all of that. And I know that's the frustration, because right now, we're doers, you're doers, and you want to say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it by May, and we're going to, whatever's going to happen for next school, it may be another year out, and that's fine. The thing is, we can continue to afford what we're doing right now. I don't know that in 2 years that would be the case. And so we need to make sure that we're staying ahead of it.
I just want us to kind of be, right now I don't feel like we're, well, I'm not gonna say the right word, but I'd like to narrow it down, like what do we want from him to put this community meeting together?
Well, and I think it's outlined pretty well here,
No,
actually.
we were talking about the online thing, and then greeting with businesses, special invitations to certain people. I think we need to define what we want to see, what we want that to look like. Because there's been a lot of great suggestions, but how many of those do we really want to do? So I think we need to discuss that.
Well, what I think I heard was this, this strategy is good. Some of the discussions about
Absolutely.
who is going to be there is what we're talking about at this point.
Right.
That's the part that, and you want as many different sectors of our population represented as possible. And really, you want as many people there as you
So do
can,
we
because
want
the
to
more
do
you
all those
collect.
options that Todd has written down? You want to do
Well-
all those, or just focus on just kind of stay focused on a few things? Is what
I'm not sure
asking.
which option, because the community meetings, that's really the
Well,
only
I'm
thing
not
we're
talking
even
about
talking
community meetings.
about.
I'm talking about like personal invitations with letters. And then I'm talking about online, something that they would have to monitor and review, an online thing. There were some other suggestions. I don't remember what they all were.
Well, it was the meetings with staff the meetings with the local workforce, business leaders, the online survey, and then the 3 community meetings that we'd already talked about. I think what it really comes down to, Debbie, is what is the comfort level of the board to have the information from these different, to then, for you guys to muddy through, if you will, and come up with what you think you're hearing from the community, which again goes back to why it's so important that everybody's there getting the flavor of those meetings.
It seems like the bottom line is the community meetings, everyone's invited. The mission is, how do we get the most people there? And then if you wanted to add a meeting, because staff's invited to all 3 of the other ones as well. But if you wanted to add one that we said to them, hey, this is one specifically for you because you're the professionals and we want to talk to you.
And I think we should do that. I really do. I love that suggestion because oftentimes they may not be able to come, like you said, they have families too and they can't. So I like the idea of just one day for them, or 2 days, whatever it takes, to discuss those things.
And then a student one. Is that what
Yeah,
we've
and
talked
that's fine
about so
too.
far?
But
Let me ask this to help with the staff one to get a little bit more direction. An initial thought that I had would be if we would let the staff at each level have those discussions about their programs and what they see at their level, and then if they wanted to have conversation or give input about the other levels, to come to one of the community meetings.
I would be fine with that.
That'd be good.
Because that way, to get through all 3 in the time that we have set aside for a PD day, I'm not sure that we could do
That
that.
might be a
Because
little-
from them, we're only,
They're experts in that area.
Right, that's what I want. I want,
But they may have students in the other levels and they may want to
Right.
come and those
but
3
then it
meetings are
becomes,
open.
their role reverses from
Parent.
a parent to a staff member.
And we did have a lot of parent/staff members at our other meetings, a lot.
Because, I personally am looking for educational consultants, not that our administrators aren't that as well, but I mean.
But it's another whole set of
It's
people
it's
though,
another whole set of educational consultants.
who have gone to all different kinds of professional development, who have all
that
been
do a
on their
lot-
own
that
path.
do a
so
lot
yeah,
of their own
I agree.
reading for what
Yep.
they'd like to see and.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm with
And
you.
Todd, I think your idea is great. I think that's what we should do.
Okay.
Then, because I think you're right, because when you go to those meetings and you're a parent and a teacher, it's kind of, which role do I play?
Yeah,
You
shifting
know, and more
hats.
likely they might play the parent role.
Okay.
But I think that idea is great. I think that's what we should do.
Okay.
Okay, so we're looking at 5 meetings then, 3 with community members, 1 that we will really target our workforce and business leaders, and then 1 with staff. So for you guys, and looking at the time frame so that you guys can be involved with all these meetings, do you want to look at, instead of, right now our goal, or the thought was, I don't want to say goal, thought was to be done by the end of January? Do you want to look at that happening between now and the end of February?
At least, if not into March.
That would be more realistic in January,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Well, I think the problem is if we stretch it out too long, all of a sudden,
They aren't fully connected.
right, and so there needs to be an urgency about it so that people know that it's important and they're, that, and it's not, yeah, they're still doing that. And so I think if we
agree
can,
with that too.
if we can do that, in more of a compacted schedule rather than dragging it on for months, would be good for the
Well,
process.
yeah, at least through the end of February, because January is half over already, so.
Let's give it deliberate time, but let's not waste time, so.
Okay, so let's. The 23rd of February is a Friday. It's the last full week in February. So what if we try to look at scheduling those meetings between January, between now and the end of, or February 23rd? And then what I'll try and do is to figure out a way to do a survey poll with you guys and with Bill, so that they can be there as well, so that way we can align those dates. Does
Sounds
that work?
Mm-hmm.
The one concern we're gonna have is with the business community. Typically, I would imagine that they would rather do that during the day than the evening. I don't know, Brad, what are your thoughts?
It's usually a 7:30.
I mean, I try to think outside of the box, and I know I think a lot differently than other people in a different situation, but, you know, even like the 19th of February is President's Day. A lot of businesses are off, but some are working. I mean, do we try to do something that day to where it frees people?
Still want to do it on 7:30 or whatever, that's their usual. Many times, that's a business, I don't know, you know that as
Or if you
well
want
as
to
I
do it
do.
during the day that day, I don't know.
Lunch-ish.
I'm throwing out different ideas, trying to think outside to get more people there. I mean, because President's Day is what, typically banks, federal,
Postal, yeah, government.
stuff like that. So you may have a parent that works at a bank that could get there, or I'm.
Or they may have to be at home with their kid.
True.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I know, yeah. I agree with you. I'm
Who
just,
knows? I mean,
or we can just set it and whoever gets there, gets there,
yeah,
you know?
so.
And that's, Debbie, where the invitation part comes in. It's just looking at your circle of influence or people you know and saying, hey, you know, you're the floor supervisor at XYZ, and it would be really great if you would be at one of these
Well,
meetings.
and I know that part of the reason why we had such great participation from the business community at our last round of meetings was because I sent them a personal invitation, but I included all the possible options. Obviously, the library was the focal point, if you will, for community other than parents. And
But there
a
were
lot of them
parents at
came
the
there,
meeting, yeah.
but a lot of them came to other ones and said, I wasn't able to make it, so I came here to Fairview,
Yeah, that's
you know,
perfect.
where I came to. Yeah, so
Well,
I
so-
think the key is we can set it and then, but we'll also give them the opportunity to come to the other ones as well. It's not limiting them,
I'm
but
just-
just
yeah,
reaching out to them.
I'm trying to think outside the box.
Yeah.
Could we also, I mean, that's you're going through the chamber for that, correct?
No, we have our own list. The chamber does a great job of supporting us and sending it out through their channels as well. But we've got a list of, Kim, how many names are on that? Close to 100, isn't it?
Key
That includes
communicator
the mayor.
panelist. that
Yes.
you've-
Because I'd like to,
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we've
Dave-
invited them to every,
yeah, if we could get Dave involved and do a radio push or something.
yeah. Yep. Okay, we'll work on that and get those dates back to you guys and try to get dates from all of you that you're available as well. And
Because the extended professional development for the staff typically starts at 2:30 on a Tuesday. So,
For the elementary.
well, I think even the middle school is 2:30, isn't it?
3 at the high school.
3 at the high school. It's not 2:30 at the elementary. That's their normal dismissal. Chuck, do you know what it is for
1:30.
elementary?
So,
It's
you know, and I
1:30
realize those meetings will move up into late, or mid to late afternoon. But if we want to get a lot of the staff involved, it'd probably be better somewhere to tie it on that day. Maybe like 30 minutes after their normal PD starts or something. I just throwing out a suggestion to help you guys think about it.
Because they'd
I
all be
mean-
there, is that what you're saying? Is that what you're thinking? Or were you thinking?
Or
do
was you
it
thinking about
instead
just
of-
making it to the PD?
That would be the PD.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, at first blush, again, we need to get with directors and principals. We're actually meeting tomorrow with principals so we can talk with them.
That'd actually be kind of exciting, I think. I look forward to those meetings.
Yeah. And I would say, if you guys can make those, that's great. If you can't, the bigger ones that I think you guys really need to be there for are the community ones. Again, by all means, if you want to be there at the buildings, that's up to you guys. But if we're having them the same day with 11 buildings, that's kind of, we're not going to.
Well, I was kind of hoping if you're going to do it at individual levels, that you would do it 3 different Tuesdays or something.
Do they have 3 Tuesdays to give, though?
Yeah, and the key is, again, is that
You know,
Letting
you'll
them all
never
get
get it unless
their-
you ask, right?
letting them all get their piece, at the same time, so then they're not, you guys should have said this, and we'll work through it. We'll bring you back.
Well, I only say that because it would be interesting. I wouldn't mind setting all 3 of those sessions at each grade level.
Let's see.
We'll bring back some possibilities for you, and then the possibility of doing like a doodle poll with dates on it for your availability as well, so you can select the ones that you guys can get to. Okay?
Sounds good.
Bill, anything else that you have for us, sir?
No, I'll stop right there. We had some dates, but no use talking about those now because they're going to change. But no, this was a good conversation. I'm really glad that we sort of use this juncture to make an adjustment to the overall process. I think we'll still get you all the information. As a board, you'll still have a challenge to sort of digest all that and decide how you want to move forward. But I feel like with this additional discussion, you're going to have everything that you need ultimately, so.
Good. Any other questions or comments for Bill?
I hope my question didn't
Or-
interrupt your presentation.
No, not at all. Well,
all your fault,
I
man.
knew at some point I was going to turn it over to all of you to hash out, and I'm glad that you did.
Just a quick question for Chuck, maybe. Does Canvas have like a live feed module, like the tweet sessions on Tuesday night, where faculty at least could have access and participate? I'm
I don't
guessing
know.
no.
I don't think it, well, I don't know if Facebook or, like a Facebook feed or Periscope, I'm not sure if that can be embedded or not. I'll have to check that out.
What are you looking for?
Well, if we wanted to have, that's the one thing all faculty has is, I'm guessing,
Access to it.
100% Canvas usage. So if there was a way that, because some are on Facebook, many aren't on Twitter, but they all have Canvas. And so if there's a way we could utilize that platform
You could join from anywhere at that point.
somehow, maybe you'd get 30%. I don't know what would be a good number of participation, but it'd be interesting. And maybe they wouldn't want a written record either. I don't know.
Could be too, though. But if we're doing it during PD time, they should be available face-to-face because that's our,
Yeah, then you're gonna get a 85 or 90%. Well, we'd like to think 100, but probably be 85.
It's
or
almost
90.
up there, isn't it?
Just
Sure.
wondering.
Any other comments or questions regarding this? All right. Bill, thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. We'll be in touch.
Yep.
Ready to move on to board reports and old business?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, there are a couple of things that I would like to bring to your attention that I have just over the last 2 days, including today, been a part of, and I want to share this information with all of you. It's kind of funny with Dixie being the legislative representative. So I was at the Indiana Urban Schools Association meeting today, and Vic Smith, I know many of you have seen Vic's notes, where he goes around and talks politics and everything that's coming up. So he sat down right beside me and he said, "Hey, do you have any idea why Senator Rotz pulled his bill regarding educational savings accounts?" Because they were due Friday from the Senate. And I said, "No, what do you think?" And he said, "Well, I think maybe some of your community members got to him." And I said, "Well, I've had a couple of conversations with him in the past." I said, "But I also know that our board president happened to pen a letter to him regarding it." And Dixie did a nice job. Was very
Very nice
direct.
job.
I didn't sign it as board president.
No, you didn't.
I signed it as a citizen.
But anyway, so I was I'm very happy that we're there. Now, that doesn't mean it can't come back in some other form or tagged on to another bill, and we'll continue to watch for that. But, so the information that I pass out to you today is the graduation pathways panel information. I'm not going to go through this whole thing. We could spend over an hour just on this. But I think what is important is for you to at least see this information and look through it. This is what I'm working with the other 10 superintendents in the state and we met yesterday with the state board staff members, with the Department of Ed staff members, and then also with a couple of board members. And just some things that you need to understand. So this document is in place. It's going to happen. For us now, what we're charged with is figuring out the implementation of this. And so some of the big concerns you can see there, the first box is the high school diploma, meet the statutorily defined diploma credit and curriculum requirements. Again, that's going to be what I'm going to pass out to you next. Right now in the legislative sessions, they're going to determine what that diploma is going to be. So if you guys will remember, we talked about per ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Acts. At the federal level, we no longer in the state of Indiana can have our general diploma. And by removing that, there are some corporations that 80% of their kids get a general diploma. Here in Richmond last year, Chuck, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was right at 10%, maybe 11%. So we do a really nice job of making sure that our students are going in the other diploma tracks, and then if their situation calls for it, moving them into the general diploma track. So right now, we truly believe that Senate Bill 177 from Cruz, that Cruz is sponsoring, is going to address this. There's a different version in the House. So one of the two will address this and make it so that that general one can be included under the guidelines of ESSA and still be utilized for us. So we're hoping, so that's just an example of, we don't even know what that looks like yet, but yet it's in the graduation pathway. The next one there is to learn and demonstrate employability skills. So what does that look like? Project-based learning, service-based learning, or work-based experience. Next week, I'm going to work with Dr. Reynolds and Mr. Shunnison and the high school administrators and counselors to begin looking at what does that mean. If this was right now, what do we have in place that could fit? What do we have that could possibly be tweaked? And what are the things that we're just like, oh my gosh, there's no way, we're going to have to change something, so that we can begin to look at that. The enactment for this is for those students who will enter high school in August of 2019. So we've got some time. So the timeline that we're looking at the state, across the state, of having our recommendation to the state board is probably August of this coming fall. So that we can begin to develop those guidelines for everybody else then to build what their graduation pathways are going to look like. Then the third area there, you can see the post-secondary ready competencies. You can see on there it has the honors diploma, last second, ACT and SAT were added, ASVAB. So you can see the different things there. The one that is the biggest concern is the OR, the last bullet, locally created pathway that meets the framework from and earns the approval of the State Board of Education. So a big key with this one is that they're saying, well, there's local control. Well, the concern is that local control is the same for everybody as far as what are some of the guidelines and requirements of local control. So if you're a charter school, or if you're a small rural school, and a student goes there up through the end of their sophomore year and then they transfer to Richmond High School, how do we plug them into the programs that we have? What's that going to look like? How's it going to fit? What if what they're offering doesn't match what we're offering? And so that hasn't been addressed yet. And the state board just kind of said, well, we're going to vote it in and you guys figure out the details later. Now, the one thing that I will kind of give the state board an out when they voted with this to approve this, even though the 2 days and 10 hours of testimony was asking them for more time. Not that we didn't want something like this, but just slow down. They felt like if they didn't move forward and do it themselves, that the legislatures would do it themselves. And they would, Lord only knows what that would look like. So they felt like at least this would put the power in the Department of Ed to bring back recommendations to them. So, tongue in cheek, okay, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, yeah, that's probably what their intent was. It's amazing how political this stuff comes up, because if you look at who they were appointed by, and you can see who went where. So then they turn around at the same meeting and voted for less money for CTE. So, you know, it just doesn't, it's all over the place. So I will be bringing you more information regarding this. By all means, feel free to read up and get confused. But as you hear things, don't hesitate to get in touch. The other thing I wanted to hit on just real quickly was a legislative update and kind of keeping you guys abreast of the things that are coming. And as I encouraged you in your board update Friday, make sure that you're paying attention to the ISBA things as they're coming out. And I'll try to forward information to you as well regarding the different things that are on the agendas. The big three today that we talked about with the urban schools, the school funding. So you guys may or may not have heard, there's more kids than what they anticipated in the state this year. I'm not sure how that happens because we're declining population in our state. So how do you end up with more kids than what you thought you were going to have? There's some conversation there if that's kids coming back from charters and choice schools, they don't know. But anyway, so both the Senate and the House have bills to address that and put that money back in place. The one benefit of the House bill right now is that it actually addresses a predicted shortfall for next year and already sets in place that they'll meet it. High school diplomas I already talked about. And then the other one was Senate Bill 350, which is various education matters, which is what I passed around to you. And the big push on this is for transparency for from charter schools. And what I want you to see from this, you know, one of the things that I've said all along is we're not afraid of competition. We just want the same rules. We have to be incredibly transparent in all kinds of different areas. So what happened here is the urban schools got together and worked with our executive director and also our lobbyists to come up with and look at what are the transparency pieces from a traditional school, a charter school, and a choice school. And so you can see the left-hand column there talks about education expenses of parents. Traditional schools, no deductions. Charter schools, no deductions. Choice schools, they get to deduct up to $1,000 per kid. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you guys please read it and just see there so you can have conversations. If you flip over to page 2 and 3, though, what I'd like for you to notice is the further you get into this with funding and public access and annual performance, if you look at the choice voucher school sections, it becomes very little in those to none, which means they're getting tax dollars and they have no accountability piece to go with them. So they can do whatever they want to with them. So this bill is really a big deal. My personal belief is that this probably will get passed on to a summer study group. What we feel is happening right now is that we're coming into an election cycle, and so they're trying to make as few waves as possible in the short session to help their electability. So we'll see where it ends up.
You mean Trump didn't make all the Republicans electable?
I'm not even going to go there. No opinion on that. Well, I have an opinion. I'm not going to express my opinion. So anyway, but the point of this is just to give you a heads up of where we are with different things that are coming down the pike. I will continue to pass on information as I get it. Kelly McDermott and I have been emailing back and forth with different things. Today, the state board kind of out of nowhere put on changing the accountability system and how we measure schools and remove some things with growth and really went in a direction that was much more passing a test than it was before. When I received that information on Monday, I immediately emailed every board member and said, what in the world is going on? Where did this come from? Heard back from one of them pretty quickly, who is a superintendent in the southern part of the state by Evansville. And his point to this was, this is just the starting point. We have to vote on this today so then we can begin to have input sessions and get. So when I checked with the J.T. Koopman, the leader of the superintendent's group, and asked him what he thought of that, he said, well, I think their input is just simply going to be online. They're going to say, well, send us your comments and we'll consider it and move on. So I emailed him back and said, what's that going to look like? So the state board has indicated they will have regional meetings throughout the state for us to go and give input on. We spent over an hour of this talking about this yesterday at our graduation pathways meeting, trying to have impact on that. So you hate to say that it's all political and it's an attack on public education, but I don't know how it can be viewed any other way. Because the schools that are going to be impacted by this are urban schools.
Well, should we publicize that? Like, I mean, this is the first time I've actually seen a comparison against these different areas.
Yeah,
I mean,
this just
should
came
this
out
be-
today from urban schools.
I mean, this is something that we should have the Palladium publish, and we should talk to our, like, invite our representatives in here to ask
We could.
why. I mean,
Yeah.
because a lot of people probably have no clue.
Yeah. And I think that it'll be hard to get them right now because they're in session. But once their session ends, and as I indicated, I think this will probably go to a study group for the summer. So later this spring, it'd be a great time to have them in because then they
Because
can
it's
influence
a
those.
8-week, 10-week session, right?
What's that?
It's a 10-week session, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Are they scheduled to be at any public forums like they've done in the past during this session?
With IU East,
Yeah.
I haven't heard that they're planning on that this time. But I would imagine. What
They
were you
usually-
asking?
I said maybe we attend any of those meetings that you talked about.
The graduation pathways one, right now, they haven't indicated that it's open to the public. What we are trying to do is instead of, because the original plan of the state board was to have the superintendents get together and then have the principals get together, and then have the counselors get together, and then have the teachers get together. And then the state board would take the information from the 4 different groups and put it into one document. And so what we asked for and recommended was, for transparency's sake, is bring all those people together. You know, instead of having 4 different meetings, let us all be in the same room, so that way it's not, there's not that trust issue of, well, you guys are you're the holder of the information, and we don't know what they said, but yet you're coming out and telling us this is what the end product is gonna be. So they've kind of changed what that direction is going to look like. So we're waiting now to see, the dates and times and where that's gonna end up. So I'll keep you posted, though, if they end up doing that. So, any other questions, though? Critical time in our state, frustrating time in our state, too. The outcry that there was for the graduation pathways nobody can remember a time where it's been duplicated or even come close to the amount of, because it wasn't just urban schools or rural schools, it was everybody across the board. And they still chose to go in the direction they wanted to go, regardless of what was said. So that was a little disheartening. But I feel like we've made some real progress yesterday, and then again today, with getting the ear of the state board and the Department of Ed as well. At least the Department of Ed, this time, they listen and they can have that conversation with you and they get back to you. And I might not always agree with Jennifer McCormick in some of her ideas and views, but she's willing to stand up for the things that she feels like and that we feel like is best for kids, even if it kind of goes against what she thinks at times too. So she's doing a good job.
So on the accountability thing,
Yes.
that hasn't been decided.
No. Supposedly, they passed it today to begin the process of having input sessions around the state that will take place winter, spring, with some kind of compilation in the summer.
Yeah, because that's one that, when you think about kids, that's one that really makes me angry, because that gives kids, the growth model gives kids incentive to keep improving. And if they don't have that, then it's always, I'm a failure, I'm a failure, I'm a failure.
Right.
And that's not fair, and it's not right.
And that's the thing, because it flies in the face of research and what all of our constituents are telling us is that we don't want a test score to determine academic achievement. You know, the graduation pathways indicates that. Yet we're going back to more testing, and so we just have to do the best we can to try and keep them accountable and keep the issue in front of our elected officials. So that's all I had as far as reports, but other business or things from you guys.
Anything else under board reports or old business?
Let me share something with you. I had to step outside to have a final comment with Mr. Payne about not only process we're going through, but process that I mentioned at the beginning of my question with him. And he congratulated us, and specifically the community, he says, because ours have been much better attended here than in the other corporation that I was speaking about specifically. A much larger corporation who's dealing with a much larger issue than we are, he said, but he congratulates this community for their attendance, their participation up to this point, so.
Good.
Good. Okay, it looks like we are at the point of previewing the upcoming meeting and events.
So upcoming meetings, again, just watch for the email, and I'll work with Kim to get some dates together for a doodle poll from all of you so that we can try and get those meetings established. Events, there's something going on every night. So if you want to get out there and see our kids, check out Bridget's portion of the board update. has all kinds of great activities.
Regarding the doodle poll, everyone's busy. I know you guys are all busy. Do your very best to be as available as possible, because I have a feeling it's going to be really difficult for us to find 5 dates, even 4 dates.
4 dates, yeah.
So yeah, I could have something every night, so I totally get it, but it's really important for us to be there.
So how many dates we're trying to get? 5?
4. We'll have, the 5th one will be part of a PD day for our teachers, for our staff.
So try to make a personal goal to be able to at least make 3 of the 4. I mean,
I would ask you to make a personal goal, make it 4 or 4, but
well,
I understand.
realistic. Right.
I understand. But I also know this is the most important issue facing this board.
Sure.
Sure
And
is.
this cannot be my plan, this can't be the cabinet's plan, it can't be the administrator's plan, it's gotta be our plan. The
It's
board is
just-
gonna have to,
It's just
really
so
own
much
this.
more realistic, well, for us to be able to have conversations later as we're coming back together, if we've actually heard and participated. That's the key, I think, especially for this group, because each of us hears with a different set of filters. So.
which is the beauty of the diversity of the board.
Exactly why there's 7 members, but yeah, it's, okay. I think
We
we're
got
at
that
our.
recorded too. He said the beauty, right?
It's on video. Press conference? Have any burning questions? And then our bell ringer.
Okay, our bell ringer tonight, we already celebrated Dixie for her service as school board president, but I just wanted to inform the board, Dixie is going to be receiving the Public Service Award at the Wayne County Chamber Awards Dinner, which is January 19th. This award has not been awarded since 2015, so it's not an every year award, it's just special times when it is brought to them. Knowing that Dixie is into her 50th year, I just thought it was very appropriate to nominate her for this, and was very pleased that the chamber accepted our nomination. And Dixie, we are proud of you and thankful for you and the things that you do for our district. So,
Is that going to be at the fairgrounds again?
yes, it is.
And what time? Do you remember?
Starts at 6, I think.
I think so.
With
Yeah.
reception.
So there'll be more information.
Have
after
the
that.
reservations closed on that, or?
Yes, today. Yep. So currently in the past, what we have done is the elected leadership of the board are the ones who participate in that dinner. So hopefully you're
I'm
scheduled.
going as a +1 this year
Oh, are
also.
you?
So
Well, then we
if
may have
someone
an
else,
open seat
if
if
someone
somebody
else
else
would
would
want to
like
go, I think we'll have an opening.
Okay. So Debbie, John, or Jeff, if you'd like to go, check your schedules.
I actually think I'm already going, so.
Well, hey, so John and Debbie, check your schedules.
I would love to go.
You won't have a
I
plus?
think so.
You would like to go?
I would love to go.
All right, Kim, there we go.
My
So-
+1 will be doing busy.
We have an additional one on that? Okay, we'll talk about
All right.
Okay. So congratulations, Dixie.
Thank you.
She was my teacher.
Well, it's
Wow.
interesting, Kim picked up the
Well, now we
plaque
gotta
this
take the award
afternoon.
away from her.
And when she picked up the plaque, the guy who
You
made the
a couple weeks
plaque
ago,
said
you
that
did
Dixie
jab
was
her, right?
his
Principal
I'm waiting.
his principal at Dennis Middle School
Yeah.
at the time.
Do you know who it is?
I know who it is. Yeah, I know Joe.
All right, with that note, we are adjourned.